Well, hello, it's great to see you. And depending on which platform you are using, welcome to the Saturday before Sunday and welcome back to the Ezra file. But anyway, be that as it may, we live, as I'm sure we have become acutely conscious in the last 24 hours or so, we live in tumultuous times. We live in times of great change. And of course, I immediately refer to the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II yesterday. But of course, we also live in a time of a new Prime Minister, a new government, if not quite yet a new Parliament, but certainly a time of great political change in our country. We also live in a time of warfare. We are deeply involved in the conflict in the Ukraine, even though we have not actually formally declared war on either of the protagonists. We also live in a time of economic and social upheaval. We live in a time of double-digit inflation, of rapidly rising interest rates, a cost of living crisis. Many people, as they look to the coming winter, may well face the choice of, do I heat or do I eat? We live in tumultuous and changing times. And what I want to do over the next few minutes, I just want to ask, what should we do? What are we called to be and to do as Christians for such a time as this? Well, let's start with Her Majesty. Let's start with the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen. I'd like to read to you just some verses from the Bible. Actually, these verses don't just apply to the Queen. They apply actually to the whole situation in which we live. We live in changing times, tumultuous times, but actually these times should not come as a surprise to us, because Jesus, when he was on earth, prepared us for them. Mark chapter 13, beginning to read at verse 5. Jesus said to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am he,' and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginnings of the birth pangs." Jesus, of course, came into the world to bring the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is an eternal kingdom, but the kingdoms of this world are not. In this world, we live in a world of change. And Jesus says we should be prepared as Christians to face times even of tumultuous change, sweeping social, economic, and political change. Those are the things that Jesus taught us to expect. And we are, I think, living through such times at the moment. Queen Elizabeth, the death of Queen Elizabeth II, who has been on the throne, as we all know, for 70 years. This is a death, of course, it's not simply the death of the head of state as a political office. This will be a death that will be felt by many at a personal level. Because I think nobody, thanks to her long reign, thanks to what she did during the war with her family, thanks to the many garden parties at Buckingham Palace, the numerous royal visits, the charities that she supported, regiments in the army and air force and navy that she was a part of in some way. Nobody understood and knew the British people better than Queen Elizabeth II. So her death, her passing, will be felt on a personal level by many people. And speaking for myself, I think one of the most meaningful things that I have done in my life, that I do in my life, is as an Anglican clergyman, when I was ordained 25 years ago, and whenever I change parishes, one of the things that I have to do is I have to take an oath of allegiance to the monarch and their heirs and successors according to law. And for me, over the last 25 years, that oath has been taken to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So should I change parishes, which I have no intention of doing, but if I ever did that in the next however many years before I retire, then I would have to take that oath of allegiance to King Charles III. So it is a very personal thing for me, to see the Queen passing, because it is somebody who has directly affected my life and the way that I do my job. And that will be true not just for me, it will not just be true for Anglican clergy, it will be true for many, many millions of people in this country and probably overseas as well. The death of a monarch is always a time of uncertainty. It is always a time when people begin to look to the future, a time when many will perhaps feel insecurity. And you can see that in the pages of the Bible, actually. You can see how much insecurity goes with the death of a monarch. If you go to the Old Testament and you read the beginning of the book of Kings, you read the beginning of the book of 1 Kings, you'll find there the story of what happened after the death of King David. After the death of King David, there was an almighty scramble for who would succeed him, an almighty and indignified scramble for the succession of the throne. And of course, as you read 1 Kings, you realize that things eventually sorted themselves out, and David's son Solomon, by his wife Bathsheba, David's son Solomon became king. And there's the famous verse in the Bible, Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anointed Solomon king. And of course, that verse from the Bible is the basis of our own coronation service. Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet, in the guise of the Archbishop of Canterbury, anointed Solomon, well, in the guise of King Charles, anointed Charles king. That's the basis of our coronation service, which we'll see for many of us be the first time in our lives we've ever seen a coronation service. So the time of the passing of a monarch is a time of great upheaval, potentially, and insecurity. But of course, that stretches across the whole political scene with a new prime minister and a new government, I say, if not quite yet, a new parliament. But I think one of the things that we should be thankful for in this country is the system that has been handed to us by previous generations. We have a constitutional monarchy, and I actually think a constitutional monarchy helps us in times of uncertainty, where we're at the moment, basically. I think the genius of our system is that the person in whom power is vested, i.e. the king or the queen, the monarch, the person in whom power is vested cannot use that power. That power is devolved onto the politicians, the prime minister, and the rest of his government or her government and parliament. But the people who use the power, that power does not belong to them. It is not theirs. It belongs to the monarch. And that balance of where power lies, I think in our system has contributed to the stability, the political stability that we have enjoyed in this country for centuries. But of course, the instability goes wider than the monarch, it goes wider than the government. As I said, it stretches out into the whole of society. Economic uncertainty, social uncertainty. Where are we going as a country? And I think one of the things at this time as Christians we should be carefully pondering and praying about and considering is what should we be? What sort of people should we be? What sort of message should we stand for at this time? And I think what we should stand for as Christians, what should be at the forefront of our minds at this time is the subject of hope. Because as I've said before many times on the Ezra File and probably the Saturday before Sunday as well, we live in a place where there is an absence of hope. We live in a time in this country where there is an absence of hope. One of my theological heroes, Leslie Newbigin, who was a missionary in India for 30 odd years, came back to this country, and people asked him, what's the difference between what you did in India and what you find here in the United Kingdom? And he said, the disappearance of hope. And he said that back in the 70s. And I actually think it's got even worse since the 70s. The disappearance of hope, the disappearance of any kind of confidence in the future. And you can see that written across our society. It's written across our society in two ways. The first way it's written economically, the colossal, the absolutely colossal levels of debt that exist in our country. Government debt after, well, the financial crisis, after COVID, after one government after another spending more than we earn as a country, is, I don't know what it is, somewhere north of £2 trillion, something like that. I don't know. Add to that the colossal amount of personal debt and business debt, and we have effectively borrowed from the future so that we can live for today. The loss of hope. And of course, the other way that the loss of hope is seen in our society is by the birth rate. Birth rate, as again, we've done an Ezra file on this, and we may have mentioned it on the Saturday before Sunday as well. The birth rate in this country, across the United Kingdom, in England rather, the birth rate, England and Wales, is 1.6 children per woman. To replace your population, you need 2.1. We are approaching the point at which no society in history has reversed its decline with a birth rate of 1.6. In Scotland, it's down to 1.3, which may well be past the point of no return for that part of the United Kingdom. What is the act of having a child? The act of having a child, of getting married and having a child, the act of getting married and having children is an act of hope in the future. If you don't have children, it is a sign, as a society, I should say, if you don't have children, it is a sign that as a society, you have lost hope in the future. So what should we do? What should we be as Christians today? We should be people of hope. We should pray for our new king. We should pray for our new government, that these would be people of hope, that they have a vision of the future and that they can implement that vision in the present to take us forwards. As Christians, that is the question that we should ask our society, the leaders of our society. What is your vision of hope? And how will you practically implement it and work towards it? But as Jesus said, in this world, we will face times of change. We will face times of upheaval and change. But in Jesus, in God, we have hope. We believe in a better future. So we must pray for our leaders that they will lead us in that direction and be people of hope. So depending on which platform you're watching, see you on Sunday, 10 o'clock at St. Mary's, 5 o'clock at St. George's, and be seeing you.